Welcome back to another episode of the HigherUp podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smoke, and in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you 6 tips that I use and have used every year to stay on track during the holidays. We have Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. When you're watching this, it will probably be today. We also have Christmas parties, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's. And this is a time of year that people really stress about staying on track with fitness goals that they've worked so hard to get to and maybe want to continue pursuing or are trying desperately to maintain. And this time of year, most people feel can derail that. And a lot of people let this time of year do that. So I'm going to share with you things that I have used that are tried and true methods for me, the things that have worked for me, though they may not work for everyone, in hopes that you can implement just a few of them into your routine going into these holiday events to stay on track with your fitness goals and even make progress throughout this last 30 or 45 days until we hit the new year when the gyms pack out and everyone has goals. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you, and I appreciate your patience as you hang with me through this tough time that me and my family are going through. Some of you know, some of you may not know, my father, who is my best friend and I look up to dearly, has gotten very, very sick, and I have had to step back in a manner from content, and it's why this podcast is coming out at such an odd time. The windows of which I can do certain things due to my limitations of bandwidth are sporadic, to say the best, or to say the least, rather. And so this is why I'm recording a podcast, because I have a pocket of 15 or 20 minutes and I want to put something out valuable to share with you guys. But I'll be honest, some days I just don't have it. I don't have the time, or I don't have the emotional bandwidth to create and to put out into the universe. And I apologize for that. This is certainly not something that I would like to be happening right now, to say the least. But we're getting through it one day at a time, and I'm showing up in the best way that I can, because who would I be if I told people about showing up every day and didn't do my very best in my own life? So I'm doing my best. I ask for your patience and your grace as I and we work through this. One of my fears, admittedly, is falling out of the good graces of the people who watch, of the algorithm, falling out of relevance, for lack of a better term, because, well, this is my career now, and it's less than 2 years in, and we've had this massive change, this unexpected sickness that has come over my dad, and it's all consuming and it's very challenging. So I just ask that you hang in there with me. You continue to watch and rate the episodes and subscribe to the channels if you're on Spotify, rating the show, continuing to watch the content that I might repurpose on other platforms that's old that you maybe have seen before, until I can come back in full form. And I promise you, when I can, I am coming back spiritually convicted and ready to make as much of a difference and on fire for my purpose, or what I believe my purpose is, which is helping people get a handle on their lives so that they don't find themselves with a health problem that creates just one problem in their everyday life. So that's a quick tangent. This is a genuine thank you for being patient with me. Now let's get into why you came here, the 6 tips to stay on track during the holidays. Tip number 1 is less of a tangible thing you can do and more of a mindset shift I challenge you to have. I need you to understand that it's just a few days. I think I made a video a few weeks ago talking about the people who say, well, it's the holidays, I might as well wait until the New Year's to get fit, and how broken of a mentality that is. Because if you really think about it, if you apply all of the holidays between, let's say, Halloween and the end of the year, and top a few parties in there as well, you're looking at maybe 4 to 8 occasions where you could totally go off the rails and potentially, quote, derail your progress. And I think that's even an overstatement. But all the holidays and the holiday parties still is 8 or 10 out of 40 to 60 days, hell, 90 days if you do October, between you and the new year. And what are you going to do in those other intermediary days? Are you just going to regress further? So you need to understand that just one day, or just 5, 6, 7 days over the next 2 months isn't enough to derail your progress. It's not enough to make you gain all the weight back. And it's certainly not enough to justify giving up or holding off 3 more months until January of the new year to get started. That doesn't make sense. Imperfect progress is still progress. And I think a lot of people struggle to accept that slow movement in the right direction is still movement. Slow movement over no movement. You got to remember that. So embody the fact that maybe your progress isn't as optimal as it would be January, February, March, when you don't have any holidays or vacations going on and it's still wintertime and people are working on their spring and summer bodies. But you can still make 1% progress. And I know even if you go all out, balls to the wall, cheat day, which we'll get into some ways to mitigate that in just a minute, on Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, holiday parties, whatever, you're still not going to undo your progress. You're still not going to gain a pound of body fat overnight. In order to do that, you would have to eat well over 4,000 calories over your maintenance, and then your body would have to perfectly store that as every ounce that it eats, which it won't. It'll burn it off. You'll lose some of it in waste as body fat. Really, it's 3,500 calories equals roughly a pound of body fat. The point is, I've eaten 10,000 calories in a day before. Not proud of that. Won't do that again. And within 3 days, my body weight was normalized. Most of that bloated feeling, the jump in the scale is just water weight. It's extra glycogen or extra carbohydrates in your muscle, to simplify the term. Use that. Push yourself in the gym. You'll feel stronger. You'll feel fuller. You'll have more energy. Use it in the gym. Use it on your runs. I need to drive home the point that people seem to struggle with, that it is just one day or it is just a handful of days. And as long as you stick to your plan in the intermediary periods, those days between, you'll be just fine. But you always got to go back to the plan. Now, that's the mindset shift. Let's get into the actual tip number one that I use every year, and that is intermittent fasting. No, it is not magic. It is just a tool. But every major holiday, we eat dinner between 4 and 6 p.m. So I utilize intermittent fasting as a way to create a calorie buffer towards the end of the day. So if I wake up at 8 a.m., 7 a.m., and I fast until 2 or 3 p.m., or even up until mealtime, I will have more of a calorie buffer for the foods I'm going to eat that are going to be fattier, more calorie dense, more sugar laden, whatever. The way that I normally do this, I'll break this down very specifically, is I'll wake up and I don't have a specific window I follow. I just fast as long as I can. And if I become uncomfortably hungry around 2 p.m., I'll have mostly protein, like at least 50 grams of protein and maybe a vegetable and a little bit of fat. No carbs. I think Will Tennyson called this term macro fasting on his podcast with Chris Williamson. I like that term he coined. I was doing it first. Just kidding. Huge fan of Will Tennyson. He'll never see this. That's okay. Point is, I will eat just protein because I know I'm going to have a lot of carbs and a lot of fats later. So I may have like some lunch meat and cheese rolled up and a protein shake. So that's, 2 scoops of protein powder, a little bit of Fairlife milk, 2 ounces of turkey, or 4 ounces of turkey and 2 slices of cheese, maybe 400 calories and 70 grams of protein. That's going to blunt my appetite, and it's going to be less than 500 calories. And that's going to give me, let's say, a calorie window of about 2,700, 2,800 calories to play with, which brings me to another point. Don't try to be in a deficit on the holiday that you're going to eat on. Just hit your maintenance calories. That'll be fine. Maybe even a slight surplus. It'll be okay. I'm not trying to nail a deficit on these days. So utilize intermittent fasting. And if you can't make it all the way up to the mealtime, that's fine. Focus on protein and keeping it low calorie and create that calorie buffer for yourself going into the meal. Conversely, if you have your meal early in the day, I know some people eat it like noon. Do the same thing, just in reverse. You want to eat the food you want to eat, fine, on the front end of the day. Well, then you better get some activity and focus on protein and vegetables throughout the remainder of the day. The importance of this, significance of this, is not doing the thing where you say, oh, I fell off track with a meal. I might as well blow the whole day. No, that doesn't make sense. That's you self-sabotaging all the progress you've worked so hard for. It's fucking silly. Don't do it. So adopt intermittent fasting, whatever window of the day that you eat, and then you can sort of play with your calories and work them like a budget into your daily calorie bank. I hope that makes sense. I hope I did a good job explaining that. Focusing on high protein, low calorie foods until you get to the meal. I like to have water, sparkling water, and coffee in the morning to blunt my appetite. Helps a ton. Huge fan of caffeine for appetite blunting, and LaCroix. Shout out LaCroix. Please sponsor me. That would be epic. I would love it forever. Love you forever, even though I already do. But yeah, intermittent fasting is a powerful tool to budget calories for that big meal. The next thing that I do is I front load my activity into the first half of the day. What I mean by this is simple. I get as many steps and as much physical activity in as I can comfortably prior to the meal. Again, we are creating a buffer. Just like with intermittent fasting, we're stacking buffers on top of each other so that we can create room to eat and indulge and not put a massive caloric hit on our bodies for the day. So I like to have like 15,000 steps and maybe a light weight training workout before I go into Thanksgiving meal or Christmas meal that looks like maybe a 5 to 7 mile run and a lift, or just a long walk. It doesn't matter. But I like to hit and supersede my step goal and maybe get a light resistance training session in. So I know I've burned through some glycogen, I've burned some calories. I've got room to buffer calories. And it really makes a difference. I mean, every 10,000 steps is like 300 to 700 calories burned on your total daily energy expenditure. On a holiday, when I'm getting 20,000 in a lift, I know my maintenance that day is probably 3,500 calories as a 6 foot, 190-pound male. So I've got a lot of room to work with. I could even eat 4,000 calories and still only be in a little surplus that it'll just burn off because I'm going to go back to maintenance or wherever I am. Right now I'm maintaining to moderate deficit most days. So it all shakes out and evens out over the course of the week. So front load your activity prior to the meal. Conversely, if you eat first thing in the morning, if you eat early part of the day, 11 or noon, maybe get a little bit of activity in and then walk throughout the day afterward. Just keep your step count high when you're focusing on protein and vegetables after the meal later into the day. Either way, buffer your caloric intake with a high activity level on that day. It'll also help your digestion, which I'll get into in just a minute. The next tip is front loading protein and veggies. I should have probably saved this as its own tip. I know I talked about it in intermittent fasting, in the intermittent fasting tip, but it does deserve its own window to shine. One thing that I do is I have if I can't fast throughout the day, like I alluded to, I will have as much protein as I want prior to the meal. Diving a little bit more into detail about this, protein is the most satiating macronutrient. So if you're going to front load protein, you are going to go into your meal or your treats more satiated. So you can do this one of two ways. You can do this, like I said earlier, have a protein shake and some turkey prior to the Thanksgiving meal, or you can do what I normally do, and you can front load protein in the holiday meal and then save the treats or the sweets or the desserts for the next plate. So my first plate of Thanksgiving food might look like turkey, ham, green beans, and collard greens. So literally just protein and greens. So maybe 60 grams of protein on my plate and greens because they're low calorie and they take up space in my stomach. Those are going to fill me up and satiate me so I don't over consume and consume rather a normal amount of the dessert food. So last few years, it's been like I literally have a mound of turkey breast, a mound of honey baked ham or turkey. Honey baked turkey is solid too. My mother's green beans that are the best, and her collard greens as well, which are also the best. And then I'll have like a glass of water. I'll wait a couple minutes, and then I'll go get the sweet potato casserole and the corn casserole, all the casseroles. Us white folk, we love our casseroles. And we have this thing called Watergate pudding that I absolutely love. I would be shocked if anybody's heard of that. It's like a graham cracker chocolate pudding, whipped cream with nuts. I don't know. It's great. And then my sister makes our late grandmother's famous brownie recipe. And I'll have a plate with a little bit of everything on it. But because I'm so satiated from the protein and greens, I just eat a normal amount of that stuff, which I'm glad about. I don't have to binge out on it. Don't have to eat it like it's never coming back. Because if I did that, not only would I have loaded up on calories, but I don't feel good physically. Like all the sugar, all the fat in one meal really fucks with my digestion. And I don't like the way I feel because I don't normally eat that way. So it really messes with my baseline. And buffering with protein really prevents me from doing that. And it's super, super helpful. I think you'll find it to be helpful too. Alluding to the point I said earlier, tip number 5 about digestion is a post-meal walk. So after your meal, I know I said front load your steps. Yes, you should absolutely do that. But I highly recommend the digestion walk after, especially a meal that's a little bit off track. You all know I talk about digestion walks all the time. I do the bat signal on my stories to signify that it's time to take your walk around lunch and dinner. But the point of this, for those of you that don't know, there is science to support the importance of walking after meals. It promotes gastric emptying or the movement of food through the GI tract. So it makes you feel so much better. You got to think, like I said earlier, if you're eating meat and produce and fruit and yogurt and eggs for the last 6 months, and then you go have casseroles and fucking desserts and cakes, your digestion's going to be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? I don't feel good. You're going to bloat. You're going to be a little bit uncomfortable. The best way to de-bloat and help your digestion is a walk. I'm telling you, if you've never tried it, you are fucking missing out. There's a reason all those amazing people in other countries walk after their meals because it feels great. You feel satisfied, but you don't feel nearly as full, puffy, or lethargic if you just walk after meals, especially after a meal that is considered off track. Minimum of 10 minutes. If you want to make it longer, go ahead. I'm fine with that. I'll probably walk for a half an hour after my Thanksgiving meal. So go for the post-meal walk, 10-minute minimum, no cap. Doesn't matter. No cap. No cap on time for however long you want to go. Enjoy yourself. You'll feel better afterward. And the last tip number 6, the next day, go back to normal. If you want to have a little bit of leftovers with some protein-dense foods, fine. But don't let it roll into multiple days of falling off track. That's how people blink and they gain 10 pounds and they go, fuck, what's the point? Time to give up on my fitness journey again. You also don't want to conversely swing to the other side, which I have been to, which is over fasting, over restricting, and over exercising. This is how you create a disordered, fucked up relationship with food, and you will regret it, and you will count everything, and you will develop a very weird attachment to food and a very unhealthy relationship with it. Trust me, I've gone down that road. So do not over restrict calories. Do not move extra the next day. Just go back to whatever your normal plan was. your normal calorie deficit, your normal step count, your normal workout, and your normal food and protein goal. I promise you, if the scale jumped, it's because you got a little extra water and a little extra sodium in your muscles. That's okay. You're a little bloated. It'll be anywhere between 1 and 6 pounds. It's not a big deal. It'll come off within a few days if you just go back to normal. The most important thing is to be present and enjoy the time you have with your loved ones. It is sacred. It is special. Enjoy it. Do not let the food control your emotional state, okay? I spent a lot of time wasting time worried about how much I was going to eat or how much I did eat and feeling bad about it. Life is too short to have an emotional connection to food. You don't have a relationship with food, you have a perspective on food. And the sooner you can kill your emotional relationship or your emotional ties to food and stop giving it so much power, the sooner you can stop stressing about this stuff and eat like a normal person at Thanksgiving. So I hope these tips helped. I again appreciate your patience and your understanding. I hope I continue to get your grace as we move through this incredibly challenging time. Thank you for those of you who reached out with support and prayers and wishes. I can't get to all of you. I want you to know I've seen as many as I can. If I didn't get to you, I'm sorry, but I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you. And it means the world that you feel convicted and compelled enough to reach out to a stranger like me on the internet and pass your well wishes along. Excuse me. Just very grateful. I hope everyone has a happy holiday, a happy Thanksgiving, a happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, and a happy New Year. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening.